I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me, the Future Template Parent Podcast. I am your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me today. Today's episode is about something near and dear to my heart, teaching grad students. I teach grad students. I love to teach. I have been a teacher. I was a teacher before I became a therapist. I taught high school and middle school, and I love to teach. So I am very excited that my new career, my lifelong career of being a therapist and social worker, allows me to continue to teach. I teach in a lot of ways, but one of them is I teach in a formal graduate school master's in social work setting. So why, might you ask, would I talk about this on an EMDR podcast? Well, for one, I think that teaching is sometimes an overlooked opportunity for therapists as an additional revenue stream. I think a lot of therapists assume you have to have a doctorate to teach in a master's program, or there aren't any positions because all the faculty members are already teaching them, like the full faculty at these programs. Not true. But yeah, so I think this can be overlooked by therapists as an additional revenue stream. Granted, not one where you're going to make a ton of money, but something different. But it's also a way to make contacts, like professional contacts in your area, in your field, and maybe in your local area, depending where you are. And it's also an invigorating way, I think, to give back to our field, especially because you're not getting paid very much, but you're doing an amazing service by teaching these future clinicians. And also, I think that EMDR therapists have unique skills and training that can give grad students really amazing insight into the opportunities available to them in our field from a perspective they might not have gotten in other classes. And we can actually teach really practical skills and interventions that students can apply themselves. So, first I'm going to talk a bit about the opportunities teaching can present. Second, how to find teaching opportunities. And third, why we EMDR therapists are the ideal people to teach in this field. So, why is teaching grad students a good career move? Well, for several reasons. So, I am a doctoral student. I hopefully will be getting my PhD in May. We'll see. It's looking like that, but you never know. And I have been lucky to teach in my school's social work master's program for 6 semesters, 6 different courses. A couple of which I taught a couple times, but total 6 semesters, 6 different groups of students. I've learned so much, but mostly it's been really fun, actually. I look forward to it every week. It's some of the best hours of my week. But, what have I learned and why has it helped me professionally? Well, first of all, I've learned that I don't ever really want to be a full-time academic, but I have continued to see that I love to teach and that I love interacting with the next generation of social workers. There's just so much energy and enthusiasm and promise in the room when you're working with students. They are ready to get out there in the field, and they are really, really eager for professional expertise, for someone who's really involved in the clinical world and can give them real on-the-ground advice and perspective on what it's actually like to be a therapist and how to get there, how to run a practice, clinical stuff, all those things. And there's a fair number of academics who they encounter who aren't practicing anymore, or practice very little. And so I think the teaching style a lot of students get is very theoretical, and it can be kind of separate from application. And a lot of students will say, I just need to know how to be a therapist, and I'm not learning that. I mean, we all know that learning how to be a therapist is a long process, a lifelong process, right? And that 2 years of grad school can't give you that. But, I think they would like a little bit more sort of practical applications. So you have so much to offer because you're actively engaged in the work. And as an EMDR therapist, you're actively engaged in a modality that's, let's be honest, it's very hot. Students want to know about it. It's not just your grandma's CBT or whatever. And your approach is likely very trauma-informed, which of course all the students are talking about, I hope, trauma-informed care. So students will eat everything you have to share right up, and it feels really good. It's like a nice kick in the butt to imposter syndrome, right? You realize how much you actually do know, when you're teaching students, and you're also making a really profound impact on how they're going to start to practice. They ask me great questions that really make me think about how I practice. I love hearing about what they're doing in the field, what they're seeing, how they're responding. So all of those things are why I love to teach. But teaching is also a great way to get connected with another network of professionals who you might not encounter in other settings, right? Get to know the other adjuncts if you can. Get to know the professors. I found that everyone's always super nice, wants to talk to me. You know, I mean, of course, I can't guarantee that's the way it is everywhere, but I found if you sort of say, hey, I have a question about teaching this class or something, people are usually open to talking to you. There are often events hosted by your program, like networking events, alum events, or trainings or special events for students. You can connect professionally with all sorts of people at those things. There's career fairs, so much stuff, right? So another great person to get to know is the career placement person. They often have a lot of connections. Get to know the people who do professional development training. If your school has one, my school has a center for post-grad professional development that runs a ton of courses. And because I was at the program and I talked to the person who is the pro dev, that's what we call it, director, I got to teach 2 paid professional development courses. And just like, it's also a great networking opportunity for referrals. Not students, of course, although I wonder if after a few years, there'd still be an ethical conflict. Like, I have never done this. I do not know. Do your research and do what aligns with your code of ethics and your values. But I just don't know. But I've had other instructors refer clients to me. I've had students refer clients to me. I've had staff members refer clients to me. It's just getting your name out there in the community, in a community of people who are doing what you do or know other people who do what you do, right? Those relationships are super fruitful. And like I said, go to events that the school runs, because that's another way to meet people. And of course, the more you teach, the more you can teach in other places, right? You're going to have a CV that has a lot of teaching experience on it, so you can connect with professionals in other places too. And you can also think of teaching as a way to develop your speaking skills, like public speaking skills. You may have noticed from my podcasting that I would not say I have a lot of public speaking anxiety. I mean, we all have nerves, but I think that that's something that from teaching a long time and just kind of my personality, it doesn't trip me up as much as some people, but it's great practice if you want to do that. Like, students are super receptive to your message and are not going to jump all over you if you make a mistake or fumble or something. They're very forgiving, I find. So it's a great place to practice that. Look, if you can talk about a topic in front of a class, make it interesting, engage students, have a discussion for a couple of hours, you can totally present to other kinds of groups. And, speaking engagements can often be paid. So getting that confidence in the classroom to do it in the community, you can get other paid opportunities that way. And also you can, if you do some speaking, you can do like a webinar or a seminar, like an hour-long talk for free. And then you might gain referrals from that, like about a topic that's in your area of expertise. So all that to say, teaching can be a great entry into the world of speaking. And finally, it is important to have diverse streams of income. I really believe this. For one, it's just great to have different things to rely on if one stream is running a little dry. If that a certain time of the year you tend to have fewer private practice clients, maybe you pick up some teaching then, right? It's also really good for burnout prevention to have that variety of income streams, right? Y'all know from how I talk about intensives, I cannot be seeing more than 15 hours of clients a week. That's kind of and I will say that I sometimes do go over that and I don't like it. I had an 18-hour week not that long ago and I could really tell the difference. But that might not be enough revenue coming in to sustain you. So other revenue streams are good, right? I also feel really energized, and I find it really exciting to talk to students. And then I find that it helps me feel energized about my clinical work. Like when I'm talking clinical stuff to students and with colleagues and they're asking me questions, and it's very energizing. So I feel like they're very mutually beneficial, the teaching and the clinical work. And then, when you're doing clinical work, you have great examples to teach about. Of course, maintaining confidentiality, all those things. And I just find it so interesting and cool to hear what students are doing in the field right now and how different it is from, when did I graduate with my master's? 2014, 10 years ago, what it was like to be in an internship and what it's like now. And, how students have kind of managed the virtual transition, COVID and all that. So it's just really interesting. And it gives you this fresh insight that, we can get kind of jaded. We've been doing this for a long time. So I just find I need that injection of like new energy that students bring. And I promise lots of schools do need adjuncts. Okay. The opportunities are out there. You just have to put in a little legwork into looking for them and, put yourself out there a little bit, like any kind of networking, like looking for new clients, like anything. You're going to have to not just sit back and wait for the opportunity to drop in your lap, but go after it a little bit. Right. So that's some reasons why I think teaching is a great addition to your professional portfolio. But you're probably thinking, sure, Carolyn, it's easy for you to get into teaching. You're part of an institution already. And yes, you're right. It has not been hard for me to get teaching opportunities. But I know plenty of other colleagues who teach, some at my program, some at other places, and don't have any formal affiliations with where they teach. So how do you get started? Well, the best place, of course, to start is with your alma mater, okay? Wherever you did your master's or your doctorate. If you're still in the area, great, bonus, you can teach in person. If you're not still in the area where you went to school, don't give up, right? Lots of schools since COVID have at least some virtual offerings. And those are often at the times when a lot of other people don't want to teach, like their evenings and weekends, because they're to accommodate part-time students. So consider that. And then you might prefer teaching online, right? It might be very convenient for you. So first step, reach out to your alma mater. Who do you know in the administration? What about the career services department? Do you have any, connections with people who are still there? If it's been a long time too, that's fine. Still reach out. Lots of places need adjuncts and don't really do a great job of advertising that. What I have seen is sometimes people drop out at the last minute from a teaching position and the school is scrambling and like asking everyone, do you know anyone? Do you know anyone? Reach out, express your interest, right? Do your research on the website to see what courses are being offered and, pick some that you think you would teach well. Then in an email cover letter, and I say email because I always put the cover letter in the email. I also attach a hard copy in Word, but people don't always open attachments and you got to grab their attention first, right? Don't make it too long. State your connection with the school if you have one. If it's your alma mater, certainly say that. Your current professional experience, your interest in teaching opportunities, and then go into why you think you could teach like a couple of courses, a few specific courses well, like what you could bring to that. Ask if there are any next steps involved in the process to become involved in teaching. Attach your CV. Certainly say like, if there's no opportunities now, I will reach back out, in a couple of months to see if there's anything in future semesters. We all know squeaky wheel, stay top of mind. That's important. And it's important here too. And like, what's the worst that could happen? They don't open your email. They don't get back to you. I mean, it's a low risk thing that you're reaching out this way, I think. Yeah, definitely attach your CV as well. Start with your school, but don't stop there. Okay. There are like lots of schools, lots and lots of professional schools. There's several, I can think off the top of my head, social work schools in my immediate area, right? If you're master's in counseling or whatever, there's a lot of programs. And just because you got a social work degree doesn't mean you can't teach at a master's in counseling, vice versa. You could even teach at community college. There are lots of, human development courses. Some programs have undergrad social work or, programs. I feel like with psychology, it's harder. It's another story, but there's a lot of options, right? You can look at a lot of websites of schools across, a variety of disciplines and see what you feel like you're a good match for. I really think that having clinical experience and being active in the clinical world makes you a especially useful asset for people who are in their master's program and about to, venture into the world and they really want your experience. But there's a variety of options. Right. So pick a handful of schools that you think would be a good match for you, see what they teach, what the offerings are, see if they're advertising for adjuncts on their website, and don't be discouraged if you don't see any advertisements. My school does pretty much all of their adjunct hiring by word of mouth. And frankly, that's not great because often they're scrambling for someone to teach a few weeks before the semester begins. Another place that I see teaching positions advertised often is on the clinical social work listserv for my state, which is very active and there's many posts a day. People post jobs there. And I've definitely seen teaching positions posted there as well. So if you have something comparable in your state, your area, your field, I would get on that. It's a good professional networking opportunity anyway. Also, think about being willing to teach evenings, weekends, or summer sessions if you can. I can teach summer sometimes, but I can't teach evenings and weekends because of kids, but that might work well for your schedule. Lots of tenured faculty do not want to teach weekends, evenings, or summer. At my school, if you're tenured, you never have to teach in the summer. That's part of your contract. Another thought, if there are professors at your school who were there when you were a student and with whom you had a good relationship, reach out to them too. Update them on what you've been up to professionally. Ask about teaching. Ask if they know who you should talk to. Meet them for coffee, whatever. Leverage your network. Staff can also be in as well. I was good buddies with the assistant to the dean at my school. I just got along with her well when I would, had a good relationship with her when I was there. And before I was back in the doctoral program a few years prior, I wanted to get in touch with the dean about something. I reached out to her. I got in touch with her directly. She made it easy for me to get access to the dean. So leveraging those relationships. As usual, it's all about relationships, right? So that's why it's a good career move to teach. Some thoughts on how to get that teaching gig. And now on to the title of the episode. Why do EMDR therapists make the best grad school instructors? Number one, like I said, it's a hot modality, okay? We know a lot we have kind of our finger on the pulse about what's happening in the therapy world by being EMDR therapists. Even though it can sometimes seem like everyone's an EMDR therapist when you are an EMDR therapist, it's really not true. And maybe this isn't a surprise to you, but I have found that there are a lot of people who still don't really know about EMDR, therapists and certainly clients. But you are an expert in EMDR and students will really find that interesting. A lot of them know about it. They're hearing about it. A lot of them have had EMDR therapy themselves. A great thing about EMDR is it's so integrative, right? It integrates elements from cognitive therapy, psychodynamic therapy, somatic, right? So you already are bringing all of those lenses in that can inform how you teach a variety of topics. Because, I'm teaching a clinical social work class right now, and we have a week about CBT, we have a week about DBT, we have a week about trauma-informed approaches, right? I know a lot about all those things, so I can talk about them, even though I am not a DBT therapist. I certainly know enough, and there's a lot of overlap, I think, between DBT and phases 1 and 2 preparation of EMDR. So I can easily talk about that stuff, right? Because EMDR is so interdisciplinary and integrated. You have a good knowledge of neurobiology from your training, right? We learned some neurobiology in EMDR, and it is a brain-based therapy, as we say. And so you have some knowledge about that. CBT, you don't necessarily have to know anything about neurobiology. You probably know about polyvagal theory, another very important, theory, affect regulation. All that is baked into EMDR. And being able to talk about that stuff is incredibly valuable to students, even if it's not on the syllabus. I think that's one of the most valuable things I bring to teaching is whatever we're reading, I can be like, oh, this reminds me of polyvagal theory. Do you guys know what that is? Let's talk about it. Students love that. What are some other things I talk about a lot? Structural dissociation theory, which most of them have not heard of. I can talk a lot about complex PTSD. I can talk a lot about dissociation in general. These things that they're seeing in their placements, but probably not learning how to treat. I talk about, the 3 phases of trauma treatment. I talk about ego states and parts work. And I talk about it in ways that they can actually use some of it. And just like that, you've used, some cool tricks that you can actually teach students to do, right? Parts work, the ASSIST protocol, the acute stress system stabilization protocol, which I talked about a few weeks ago. If you haven't listened to that episode, I believe it's episode 38. I talk all about that. Resourcing, tapping in resources. You can teach anyone how to do that with a client, right? That's not an EMDR specific thing. Somatic interweaves, any kind of somatic work. Like, there's so many things you can teach them about, like using your body to attune to a client, some sort of somatic intervention, right? Like, you can teach students that even if they're not, quote, EMDR trained. You know a lot about trauma and how to work with trauma. And I guarantee you, your students are in internship settings in which they are seeing a ton of trauma and feeling totally overwhelmed by it. You have dealt, as an EMDR therapist, you have worked with some really challenging issues and dealt with them well. They are going to be so gratified. Is that the word? Grateful for, I guess. Gratified sounds weird. Grateful for your experience, okay? They want to know this stuff. They're like really hungry to hear these things. You've likely had some really good outcomes that you can share with them that will be very inspiring. I think a lot of the time in internship, it can feel very discouraging, right? You can feel like, am I ever going to help anyone? Does this therapy thing really work? Like all that stuff. And so having some really great case examples that you can use can feel so good to the students, and you can really walk them through, like, what did I do? What choices did I make? How did I conceptualize this person? And you could teach them, adaptive information processing theory, right? We don't have to save all these things for EMDR training. All of them are things that students can access and can learn and would be really useful for them. You can talk about intensives with students and inspire students that like the 50-minute hour is not the only way they can go. You can talk to them about building a practice, because that's something else that nobody ever talks about. Did you learn about that in grad school? I sure didn't. You can answer questions they have about that. You can show them resources. My students are going to graduate in the spring, like hopefully I will, and they all really want to know that stuff. So I'm happy to talk about it. Why gatekeep that information? I mean, I think it's sometimes considered like not academic enough, or therapists aren't supposed to make money, so we better not talk about marketing. But hey, like, why not have it be you who breaks down some of those barriers? Like, you're not a faculty member. What are they going to do? Fire you? I mean, they could not ask you back, I guess, but I doubt that. Once they've got you in their clutches, I'm telling you, once you've taught one class for an institution and like it's gone smoothly, like you've done your job, they will ask you back. Okay. They're like, yay, we have someone else on our list. Awesome. You'll probably be on some listserv where they send out an email every, middle of the previous semester saying, we have these openings, who can teach them? Like, I'm telling you, get your foot in the door and you're good. Students will feel like they're actually learning how to be a therapist from you, okay? Not just learning abstract theories and being told, just be present, your presence is enough. I mean, we know that that's real and that the relationship is so important, but students do want to know more than that. And you can provide that and they will be so grateful, okay? And if you decide or already do offer, supervision or consultation of some kind, these students will be great potential supervisees or consultees and will tell other people about you, right? Another way to speaking of another revenue stream, right? Like not just seeing clients, supervision and consultation are great. Like, in EMDR, if you're interested in becoming an EMDR consultant, like these could be, or if you already are, these could be your consultees someday, right? And someday they might refer clients to you. There's just like the network, creating a web of a network has many pieces to it, and teaching is part of that. And of course, you are not teaching students to do EMDR. Okay, you're not doing an EMDR basic training. Please don't do that for many reasons. You can get in trouble. You're going to forget things, whatever. It's not the format in which to do that. You're not allowed to anyway, according to EMDR. So they need basic training, right? But you can inspire them to train in EMDR and you can tell them about all of the amazing opportunities it's brought to you. Okay. And hey, I think the more EMDR trained clinicians we have, the better. I wish we were teaching EMDR in grad school, but maybe someday. But I promise that your energy and your skill, they will just be so grateful to have had you, and like your name will get out in a lot of circles. So for all those reasons, consider this option. Just know that, like, yeah, there are things about it that are not fun, like grading. And often if you're adjunct teaching, the syllabus is already written, like you don't have to do that. Thank God. That's another job in itself. Sometimes you're teaching in a team, like there's a bunch of us teaching clinical social work. And so I have support. I have someone to ask questions to, like the senior faculty member who's in charge. There's usually support built in for adjuncts. I don't know if usually in a lot of places, I'm sure there are places where you're kind of on your own, and, I would urge you to be picky if you can be. But it can be a great experience. It can add so much to your practice, and it can really be beneficial in a lot of other ways. Like it can turn into a lot of other things if you leverage it, basically as a networking resource. So, I had a lot of energy there. It's really funny. When I listen to the podcast, I listen to check that it's okay. I listen to it on 2x speed with the captions on to make sure it's fine. And do I talk fast. So talking fast 2x fast is very fast. So you guys know I just have lots of energy and I just can't tamp it down, especially about topics like this. Okay. So today was all about why EMDR therapists make great grad school instructors. I talked a little bit about why it's a good career move to be a grad student instructor, school instructor, how to get started doing it, and why EMDR therapists in particular can offer so much to students. So I'm curious, do you teach? Have you taught? How'd you get started? What do you love and not love? I bet you don't love grading. Who does? I have some waiting for me that I have to do. But let me know your thoughts and experiences and questions on Instagram at Future Template Parent. You can also check out my website, www.futuretemplateparent.com, if you haven't already. You can get updates on all my offerings. As always, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week. Next week, I'm going to talk about, it was a question that was actually submitted to me, about what do I do during my 90-minute intake session. So I'm going to talk about that in more detail, and also talk about how that blends in to the first session of my intensive. So that will be fun to talk about, and I'm grateful for the person who submitted the question. Anytime you want to submit something you want me to talk about, please do, because I'm always looking for topics that will be of interest to you. So anyway, be well, everyone. Thank you as always for listening, and I'll be back next week. Take good care. Bye.